I overheard my wife mocking me and comparing me to a vibrator, so I stayed silent, planned carefully, and took back my respect in front of everyone. Instead, I heard my wife's voice echoing from the kitchen, animated and loud. She was on speakerphone, clearly in the middle of what sounded like girl talk with her friends. I paused at the entrance, about to announce myself, when her words stopped me cold. "Girl, I am telling you, even my vibrator lasts longer than him." Her laughter rang out, followed by squeals from her friends on the other end. I am not even joking. Sometimes I wonder if I should just skip the whole thing and go straight to my drawer. My blood ran cold. She was talking about our intimate life, about me, to her friends. "Oh my God, really?" one of her friends gasped through the speaker. "That is terrible. I know, right? And the worst part is, he thinks he is doing something special. Like, honey, 2 minutes of fumbling around is not exactly earth-shattering." More laughter erupted from both sides of the call. I stood frozen in the hallway, briefcase still in hand, trying to process what I was hearing. My own wife was broadcasting our private moments to her entire social circle, reducing me to a punchline. "Have you tried talking to him about it?" Another friend chimed in. "What is the point? Men do not listen anyway. Besides, my little pink friend never disappoints. At least I know what I am getting with that." She giggled like a teenager. Consistent performance every single time, unlike some people in this house. The friends burst into more laughter. I heard one of them say, "Girl, you are too much. But seriously, you deserve better than that. Tell me about it. Sometimes I think about just replacing him altogether. Why deal with the disappointment when I've got something that actually works?" I felt something shift inside me, but it was not hurt or sadness. It was calculation. Pure, cold calculation. She wanted to humiliate me behind my back. She wanted to share our private business with her friends. She wanted to compare me to a piece of plastic. I quietly set my briefcase down and listened to more of their conversation. She went into even more detail about our bedroom activities, painting me as some kind of incompetent fool who could not satisfy his own wife. Every word she spoke was another nail in the coffin of whatever respect I had left for her. "Anyway, I should probably go," she finally said. "He will be home soon, and I need to pretend like everything is normal." Pretend like everything is normal. Those words echoed in my head as I heard her hang up the phone. She was going to greet me like nothing happened, like she had not just spent 20 minutes destroying my reputation with her friends. I stood there for another moment, letting the full weight of what I had heard settle in. My wife had just publicly humiliated me to multiple people, reduced our marriage to a joke, and was planning to act like nothing happened. But something had happened. Something had definitely happened. I heard her moving around in the kitchen, probably getting ready to play the role of the loving wife. The same woman who had just told her friends that a vibrator was a better husband than me was about to smile and ask me about my day. I picked up my briefcase and walked into the kitchen with a calm expression. She turned around with that fake smile I was apparently too stupid to notice before. "Hey, honey, you are home early today." She came over to kiss my cheek, the same lips that had just been talking trash about me to her friends. "Yeah. Finished up sooner than expected," I replied, my voice steady and controlled. "How was your day?" "Oh, just the usual. Talked to the girls for a bit. Cleaned up around here." She gestured around the kitchen like she'd been busy being the perfect housewife instead of busy being the perfect gossip. I nodded and smiled. "That is nice. What did you talk about?" For just a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty, guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Nothing important, just girl stuff. You know how it is." She waved her hand dismissively and turned back to whatever she was doing at the counter. "Girl stuff, right? Girl stuff that involved rating my performance against electronic devices and sharing intimate details with anyone who would listen." I walked over to the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, taking my time to think. She had no idea I knew what she had said. She was standing there acting like the devoted wife, completely unaware that I had heard every single word of her little performance review. "I am going to go change," I announced, heading toward the stairs. "Okay, honey. Dinner will be ready in about an hour." I climbed the stairs slowly, my mind already working through possibilities. She wanted to talk about performance. She wanted to compare me to her toys. She wanted to share a private business with her friends. I was going to give her exactly what she was looking for, but not in the way she expected. Walking into our bedroom, I looked around with new eyes. This was not just our private space anymore. This was apparently material for her comedy routine with her friends. Every moment we had shared in here had been turned into entertainment for others. I opened my laptop and started doing some research. If she wanted to play games, I was going to learn the rules, but I was not going to play by her rules. I was going to make my own. Who could play at this game? The difference was, I was going to win. Over the next few days, I became a different kind of husband. Not the oblivious fool she apparently thought I was, but a man gathering intelligence. I started paying attention to things I had previously ignored, and what I discovered made my blood boil. She was not just talking to one friend. This was a pattern. I came home from work on Wednesday to find her giggling on the phone again. This time, I made sure to listen from the garage before entering the house. I swear, it is like he learned everything he knows from a manual written in the 1950s, she was telling someone. Zero creativity, zero stamina, zero awareness of what actually works. Different friend, same conversation, same humiliation. Thursday morning, while she was in the shower, I did something I had never done before. I checked her phone. What I found there made the overheard conversations look like gentle teasing. Screenshots. She was taking screenshots of her conversations and sharing them in a group chat called Wine and Wine with 6 other women. Our private life was apparently regular entertainment for this entire circle. One message thread from the previous week read, "Had to fake it again last night." Starting to think I should just buy stock in battery companies since that is the only thing that actually finishes the job around here. The responses were even worse. Laughing emojis, sympathetic comments, and suggestions for better alternatives. One friend had even sent links to online stores complete with reviews and recommendations. But the message that really caught my attention was from 2 days ago. Thinking about having a girls' night soon. You should totally tell everyone about your situation. They will die laughing. A girls' night where I would be the main topic of conversation, where my wife would stand up in front of a room full of women and perform her little comedy routine about her pathetic husband. I put her phone back exactly where I found it and got ready for work, but my mind was already 3 steps ahead. That evening, I started phase 2 of my investigation. I began working out, not just casual exercise, but serious, focused training. I researched everything I could about improving stamina, technique, and performance. If she wanted to compare me to her toys, I was going to make sure the comparison worked in my favor. But more importantly, I was preparing myself mentally. I was not going to confront her like some desperate, wounded husband begging for respect. I was going to handle this like a man who knew his worth and was not willing to accept less than what he deserved. Friday night, she mentioned the girls' night. "Hey, I am thinking about having some friends over next weekend, maybe Saturday." She was organizing something in the kitchen, not even looking at me when she spoke. "Sure, that sounds fun. Anyone I know?" I kept my voice casual, interested, but not suspicious. "Just the usual group. We have not all gotten together in a while." She glanced at me quickly, then looked away. "You could always go hang out with your friends or something. Give us some space to talk. Give them space to talk about me, about our marriage, about how disappointing I apparently was. Actually, I think I will stick around. I like your friends." I smiled at her, and for a moment she looked genuinely confused. "Oh, okay, I mean, it is just going to be girl talk, probably pretty boring for you. I am sure I will find it interesting." Something in my tone must have caught her attention because she stopped what she was doing and looked at me directly. "Is everything okay? You have been acting different lately." Different. She was finally starting to notice that her husband was not the same clueless man she had been mocking to her friends. "I am fine. Just been thinking about some things." I walked over to where she was standing and looked her directly in the eyes about our relationship, about what I want from it. She blinked, clearly not expecting this kind of direct conversation. "What do you mean?" I have been thinking about whether I am getting what I deserve from my marriage and whether you are getting what you deserve from yours." The way she shifted uncomfortably told me she knew exactly what I was talking about, even if she did not want to admit it. "I think we are fine," she said quickly, turning back to whatever she was doing. We are happy, right? Happy wives do not spend their time telling friends that vibrators are better than their husbands. "Are we?" I asked simply. She did not answer right away, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. "I am going to go read," I announced, leaving her standing there with her thoughts. Upstairs, I continued my research. I was not just learning about physical performance anymore. I was studying psychology, relationship dynamics, and power structures. I was learning about the difference between being respected and being taken for granted. My wife had made the mistake of thinking I was weak. She had confused being kind with being a pushover, mistaken being considerate for being controllable. Saturday morning, I woke up early and went to the gym. When I came back, she was already getting ready for her girls' night. "What time are your friends coming over?" I asked, toweling off from my shower. "Around 7. "You sure you want to stick around? It is really going to be just us talking about boring stuff. I am sure it will not be boring at all." She gave me another one of those confused looks, but did not push it. That afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I went shopping, not for groceries or household items, but for myself. New clothes, new cologne, new confidence. I was preparing for battle, and I was going to make sure I looked the part. When I came home with my shopping bags, she was in the kitchen preparing snacks for her friends. "What is all this?" she asked, looking at the bags. "Just some new things. Thought it was time for an upgrade." I carried the bags upstairs without elaborating. That evening, as I got dressed for her girls' night, I looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me looked different, confident, determined, ready. I could hear her friends starting to arrive downstairs. The same voices I had heard laughing about me through the phone. The same women who thought I was some kind of joke. They had no idea what they were about to walk into. I finished getting ready and headed downstairs. It was time to meet my wife's friends properly. Time to show them exactly who they had been talking about. Time to turn the tables. I walked downstairs at exactly 7:30, giving them enough time to settle in and get comfortable. As I entered the living room, the conversation stopped abruptly. 6 women, all holding wine glasses, turned to look at me. "Ladies," I said with a confident smile, "do not let me interrupt. Please continue with whatever you were discussing." My wife's face had gone pale. She clearly had not expected me to make such a deliberate entrance. "We were just catching up," one of her friends said. The same voice I had heard laughing about my supposed inadequacies over the phone. Catching up. How wonderful. I moved to the bar cart and poured myself a whiskey, taking my time. I love hearing about people's lives, especially the intimate details. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel my wife's eyes burning into me, trying to figure out what I was doing. "Honey, maybe you should go watch the game or something," she suggested, her voice tight. "Oh, I would not dream of missing this. It has been so long since I have socialized with your friends." I turned to face the group directly. "I feel like I know you all so well already, through our mutual conversations." One of the women, a blonde who I recognized as the most vocal participant in the phone calls, looked confused. "Mutual conversations? Well, not exactly mutual. More like shared experiences." I took a sip of my whiskey and smiled. "You know how it is. Sometimes you learn things about yourself from unexpected sources." My wife was gripping her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. "I do not understand," another friend said. "Let me be more specific." I walked over to the couch and sat down, completely relaxed. I have been learning a lot about performance lately, about expectations, about the difference between perception and reality. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "For instance," I continued, "I have discovered that some people have very interesting standards for comparison. Very creative benchmarks for measuring satisfaction." My wife's face was now bright red. She knew exactly what I was talking about. "I find it fascinating how modern technology has changed people's expectations. How some individuals might prefer the reliability of, shall we say, artificial alternatives over the unpredictability of human connection." The blonde friend was starting to look uncomfortable. "I am not sure what you are getting at." "Oh, I think you do." I looked directly at her. "After all, you were quite vocal about your opinions on the subject. Something about consistency and performance standards, if I remember correctly." The recognition dawned on her face, then panic. I do not know what you think you heard, but I heard exactly what you said. All of you." Every laugh, every comment, every suggestion for improvement, every recommendation for better alternatives. I stood up and walked to the center of the room. My wife finally found her voice. "You were listening to our private conversations." "Private?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sweetheart, when you put someone on speakerphone and broadcast their personal business to a room full of people, it stops being private. When you screenshot conversations and share them in group chats, it becomes public property." The group exchanged panicked glances. They all knew about the screenshots. "Here is what I find interesting," I continued, pacing slowly around the room. "You all seem to think you know so much about performance and satisfaction. You have got opinions about stamina, technique, and effectiveness. You have even got product recommendations." I stopped directly in front of my wife. "But here is the thing about performance. It is not just about one person. It is about communication, effort, and mutual respect. It is about creating an environment where both people can succeed." I turned to address the entire group. When someone spends their time mocking their partner instead of working with them, when they choose to humiliate rather than communicate, when they prefer to complain to friends rather than solve problems together, well, that says more about them than it does about their partner. The silence was crushing. But I am not here to lecture anyone about relationship dynamics. I am here to address the elephant in the room. I finished my whiskey and set the glass down. "You all think you know what you are talking about. You think you understand performance and satisfaction and what makes a good partner? I looked each of them in the eye, but none of you have any idea what you are actually dealing with. My wife was staring at me like she had never seen me before. So, here is what is going to happen. We are going to have a little demonstration, not the kind you are thinking, I added quickly as several faces showed alarm. I am talking about a demonstration of character, of respect, of what happens when someone decides they are tired of being treated like a joke. I walked back to my wife and stood directly in front of her. You wanted to compare me to your toys. You wanted to rate my performance for your friends. You wanted to turn our private moments into entertainment for others. Her eyes were wide, and I could see she was finally understanding the gravity of what she had done. Well, congratulations. You got my attention. I leaned down so only she could hear me. But now you are going to learn the difference between the man you thought you married and the man you actually married. I straightened up and addressed the group one final time. Ladies, I think it is time for you to go home. The entertainment portion of the evening is over. Nobody moved. That was not a suggestion. One by one, they started gathering their things. The blonde friend tried to say something to my wife, but I cut her off. No more private conversations, no more group chats, no more sharing of personal information. What happens in this house stays in this house from now on. Within 10 minutes, they were all gone. My wife and I were alone in the living room, the silence between us heavy and charged. She was still sitting on the couch, staring at me with a mixture of shock and something else I could not quite identify. We need to talk, I said simply. She nodded, but did not speak. But first, I want you to understand something. The man you have been mocking to your friends, the man you have been comparing to electronic devices, he is gone. He has been replaced by someone who has very different expectations for how he is going to be treated. I headed toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back. When you are ready to have a real conversation about our marriage, let me know. But it is going to be a very different conversation than the ones you have been having with your friends. I left her sitting there alone with her thoughts and the consequences of her actions. The real conversation was about to begin. She came upstairs 20 minutes later. I was sitting on the edge of our bed, waiting. When she walked in, her face was streaked with tears, but I felt no sympathy. Those tears were for getting caught, not for what she had done. How long have you known? She asked, standing in the doorway like she was afraid to come closer. Long enough? Long enough to hear multiple conversations. Long enough to see the screenshots. Long enough to know this was not just one mistake. She crumpled. I am so sorry. I never meant for you to find out like that. You never meant for me to find out at all. I stood up and walked to the window. You were perfectly happy humiliating me behind my back indefinitely. It was not like that. I was just venting to my friends. Stop! I turned around sharply. Do not you dare try to minimize this. You were not venting, you were performing. You were turning our marriage into your personal comedy show. She flinched at the harshness in my voice. You shared intimate details about our relationship with 6 different women. You took screenshots of conversations mocking me. You planned entire social gatherings around making fun of your husband. I walked closer to her. That is not venting. That is betrayal. I know, and I am sorry. Sorry does not fix this. I cut her off again. Sorry does not undo months of humiliation. Sorry does not make me forget that my own wife thinks so little of me that she would rather confide in strangers than talk to her husband. She was crying harder now, but I was not finished. You want to know what the worst part is? It is not that you were unsatisfied. It is that you never gave me a chance to do anything about it. You went straight to mocking me instead of working with me. I did not know how to talk to you about it, she whispered. But you knew how to talk to everyone else about it. I sat back down on the bed. You had detailed conversations with your friends. You shared product recommendations. You made jokes and comparisons. You just could not be bothered to have one honest conversation with your actual husband. The silence stretched between us. She was standing there waiting for me to forgive her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I was not that man anymore. So here is what is going to happen, I said. Finally, things are going to change dramatically. She looked up at me, hope and fear mixed in her expression. First, you are going to cut contact with anyone who is part of your little entertainment circle. No more girls' nights, no more group chats, no more sharing our business with outsiders. But they are my friends. They are not your friends. Friends do not encourage you to disrespect your husband. They do not laugh when you humiliate the person you are supposed to love. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. Second, you are going to learn what respect looks like. You are going to stop taking me for granted. You are going to stop assuming I will just accept whatever scraps of attention you feel like giving me. I do respect you. No, you do not. But you are going to start. I stood up and walked to our dresser, pulling out some clothes. Where are you going? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. I'm sleeping in the guest room. Until you figure out whether you want to be married to me or married to your vibrator. The words hit her like a physical blow. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. You made it clear that you prefer your toys to your husband, so enjoy them, but do not expect me to compete with plastic for my wife's attention. Please, do not do this. We can work through this. I stopped at the door and turned back to her. We can work through this when you decide that your marriage is worth more than your entertainment. When you decide that respecting your husband is more important than getting laughs from your friends. I want to fix this. Tell me how to fix this. You can start by deciding whether you want to be married to me or not. Because the man you married, the one who would accept being treated like a joke, he is not coming back. I walked toward the door, then paused. And when you make that decision, remember this. I am not asking you to choose between me and your friends. I am asking you to choose between respecting your marriage and destroying it, because that is what you have been doing. I left her standing there alone in our bedroom with the weight of her choices finally hitting her. The guest room was quiet and clean. As I lay down on the bed, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. I was not angry anymore. I was not hurt. I was resolved. She could choose to respect our marriage, or she could choose to continue treating it like a joke. But she could not do both, and I was not going to wait around indefinitely for her to figure that out. 3 days passed. 3 days of me going about my business while she tried to figure out how to fix what she had broken. I went to work, came home, worked out, and slept in the guest room. I was polite but distant, treating her like a roommate rather than a wife. She tried everything: apologies, explanations, attempts at physical affection. I rejected them all with the same calm detachment. How long are you going to punish me? She asked on Wednesday morning as I was getting ready for work. I am not punishing you. I am protecting myself. I adjusted my tie in the mirror. There is a difference. This is killing me. Please just tell me what I need to do. I turned to face her. You need to prove that you understand what you did wrong. Not just that you got caught, but what you actually did wrong. I hurt you. I disrespected you. I shared private things that should have stayed between us. That is a start, but you are missing the bigger picture. She looked confused. You chose your friends over your husband. You chose entertainment over intimacy. You chose to be right rather than be married. I picked up my briefcase. Until you understand that, nothing changes. That evening, I came home to find she had cooked an elaborate dinner. Candles, wine, my favorite meal. She was dressed up, trying to recreate some romantic evening from our past. I thought we could have a nice dinner together, she said hopefully. I looked at the setup and shook my head. This is not about dinner. This is not about romance. This is about respect. I'm trying to show you that I care. You are trying to skip past the hard part. You want to go straight to forgiveness without doing the work. I loosened my tie, but that is not how this works anymore. I walked to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich, eating it standing up while she sat alone at her romantic table. I do not understand what you want from me, she said, tears starting again. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to realize that you cannot just apologize your way out of months of disrespect. I finished my sandwich and headed upstairs. When you are ready to have a real conversation about rebuilding trust, let me know. Friday night, she tried a different approach. She had clearly been doing research because she attempted to have a serious conversation about our relationship. I have been thinking about what you said, she began as I sat reading in the living room about communication and respect. I put down my book, but did not respond. I realize now that I should have talked to you directly about our problems, instead of going to my friends. Go on. And I understand that sharing intimate details was a betrayal of trust. What else? She paused, clearly struggling. I do not know what else you want me to say. That is the problem. You are trying to say what you think I want to hear, instead of actually understanding what you did. I stood up and walked to the window. You did not just share details. You created a narrative where I was the villain and you were the victim. You made our marriage into a joke where I was the punchline. I never meant. It does not matter what you meant. What matters is what you did. I turned back to her. You destroyed my trust. You humiliated me publicly. You chose strangers over your husband. The weight of it was finally hitting her. How do I fix this? You prove that you have changed, not with words but with actions. You show me that you understand the difference between being married and being single. I do not understand. Single people share their relationship problems with friends. Married people work through them with their partners. I picked up my book again. When you figure out which one you want to be, let me know. Saturday morning, something shifted. She did not try to apologize or explain or negotiate. Instead, she did something she had not done in months. She asked me what I needed from her. I want to save our marriage, she said simply. Tell me how. Delete their numbers. Block them on social media. Cut all contact with anyone who is part of your entertainment committee. That is all my friends. No, those are people who encouraged you to disrespect your husband. Friends would have told you to talk to me, not mock me. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and started deleting contacts. What else? She asked when she was finished. You are going to learn to communicate with me instead of about me. When you have a problem, you bring it to me first, not to strangers on the internet, okay? And you are going to understand that earning back trust takes time. You do not get to set the timeline for my forgiveness. She nodded, tears in her eyes, but different tears this time, not self-pity, but genuine remorse. I am sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry for all of it. I know you are, but sorry is just the beginning. For the first time in a week, I saw hope in her eyes. Not the desperate hope of someone trying to avoid consequences, but the determined hope of someone ready to do the work. I will do whatever it takes, she said. We will see. But as I looked at her, I realized something had changed in me too. I was not the same man who would have accepted her apologies and pretended everything was fine. I was someone who knew his worth and was not willing to settle for less. The real work was just beginning. 2 weeks later, I moved back into our bedroom, not because she had begged me to, but because she had earned it. She had done exactly what I had asked without complaints or negotiations. More importantly, she had started communicating with me instead of about me. I have been thinking about what you said, she told me one evening as we sat together on the couch, about the difference between being married and being single, and I realized I was living like a single person who happened to share a house with someone. I was handling my problems alone and treating you like a roommate instead of a partner. I nodded. Go on. I want to be married. Really married? Not just wearing a ring and sharing bills. She looked at me directly. I want to be your wife, not just someone who lives with you. What does that look like to you? It means bringing my problems to you first. It means protecting our privacy instead of sharing it. It means choosing us over outside opinions for the first time. In months, I felt like I was talking to my actual wife, instead of a stranger wearing her face. There is something else, she continued, about the physical part of our relationship. I tensed slightly, not sure where this was going. I realize now that I never gave you a chance to be what I needed. I complained to everyone else instead of working with you. I set you up to fail, and then mock you for failing. That is true. I want to change that. I want us to figure it out together, like we should have from the beginning. That is going to require honesty, real honesty, not the kind you shared with your friends. I know, and I am ready for that. That night, for the first time in weeks, we had a real conversation about our relationship. Not her complaining or me defending, but both of us working towards solutions. It was awkward at first, but it was honest. I should have talked to you directly, she admitted, instead of building up resentment and sharing it with everyone else. And I should have noticed that you were unhappy instead of assuming everything was fine. We both made mistakes, but mine were public, and that is not okay. I appreciated that she was not trying to make us equally responsible for her choices. Over the following weeks, things continued to improve. She kept her word about cutting contact with her former friends, and gradually started building new relationships with people who respected marriage instead of mocking it. I miss having friends, she told me one evening. You can have friends, but they need to be people who support our marriage, not people who encourage you to trash it. I know. I am learning to tell the difference. 3 months later, we were at a dinner party with some of my colleagues. One of the wives started complaining about her husband, expecting the other women to join in with their own stories. My wife looked at me across the table and smiled. I think that is between you and your husband, she said politely. Some conversations are better kept private. The woman looked surprised but dropped the subject. Later in the car, my wife turned to me. Did I handle that right? Perfectly. It felt weird at first not joining in, but then I realized how much better it felt to protect us instead of exposing us. That is the difference between being married and being single. I get it now. Really get it. 6 months after that confrontation with her friends, we were stronger than we had ever been. Not because we had forgotten what happened, but because we had learned from it. I want to thank you, she said one evening as we were getting ready for bed. For what? for not giving up on us, for showing me what I was throwing away. You did the work. I just stopped accepting less than I deserved. Most men would have just divorced me. Most men would have never found out. They would have stayed clueless, while their wives mocked them behind their backs. She shuddered. I cannot believe I did that to you, to us. But you stopped, and more importantly, you understand why it was wrong. I will never take you for granted again. Good, because I will not let you. That night as she fell asleep beside me, I reflected on how much had changed. I was not the same man who would have accepted her apologies and pretended everything was fine. I was someone who knew his worth and had proven that he would not settle for less. She was not the same woman who thought she could disrespect her husband without consequences. She was someone who understood that marriage required protection, not performance. The toys were gone, not because I demanded it, but because she had thrown them out herself. I do not need replacements, she had said. I need my husband, and she had him. But she had the real version now, the one who commanded respect instead of hoping for it, the one who created his own space instead of begging for it, the one who turned her humiliation into his victory. Some battles are worth fighting. This one had been worth winning. Our story has come to an end. If you have made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I have selected 2 other videos for you that I am sure you will enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I will be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.